Hello, welcome to episode 126 of what I call the Notcast. I'm going to be talking about records that I love and my experiences and memories with them, and a little bit about the bands at the same time. If you've seen any of these before, you'll know the format. It's me sitting here talking about things while showing you albums, records, CDs, DVDs, VHS tapes, cassettes, t-shirts, posters, badges, stickers, and t-shirts, whatever else I can think of. I didn't think I'd get to quote Dire Straits, but for some reason, that's where my brain went. On behalf of your ears, I am really sorry. I am not a fan of Dire Straits. Today, I am talking about Depeche Mode's fourth album, Some Great Reward, which was released in 1984. And I have at my feet here a huge assortment of records from around about that period in the band's career. It is the 8th of August 2021. It is about 9 p.m. now, and a lot of people I know are in Edinburgh watching a singer who I think is absolutely fantastic, Catherine Joseph, play a show. For many of them, that will be their first post-COVID live show. I've had, well, I was due to have two post-COVID shows, Mogwai at Prism in Kingston and the Wedding Present at Tunbridge Wells, both of which have been postponed. So my next show is going to be over a month away now in London, and I will rave about it at the time should that happen. I really, really hope it does. I'll tell you why when we get that far. Today I'm going to talk about Depeche Mode's Some Great Reward album, which was released in 1984. The last time I talked about Depeche Mode, I had quite a meagre harvest, really, in terms of releases. There was only 2 singles from the album, Construction Time Again and the album itself. This one, there is the album Some Great Reward. There is the singles, People of People, Master and Servant, Blasphemous Rumours, Shape the Disease, the singles album, and It's Called a Heart. As well as a number of compilation releases, most notably People are People in America and Catching Up with Depeche Mode, also released in America. But today we're going to start with what is, I think it might actually be their biggest hit. Although they haven't played this live since 1988. In March 1984, Depeche Mode released their umpteenth single, People are People. And it's a really good song. It was one of their biggest hits. It got to number 4 in the UK. In the US, I think it got to number 13 in 1984 when it was released there in July 1984. And then it went a little bit further up the charts, bowled under for about a year or so. So much so, the band thought they might actually make an effort and bother playing America and releasing records over there and touring. They'd written off America previously after, I think, a pretty disastrous tour in early 1982 where they lost a lot of money and didn't sell very many tickets. They didn't think America was interested, but thanks to this single, they changed their minds. This is I think a lot of people think this is a really good song of theirs. I think it's an okay song, People are People. Lyrically, it's not Martin Gore's best ever songwriting. It's quite one-dimensional, quite banal, and it's got a very simple rhyming structure. That's a helicopter, by the way, in case you can hear that. There's a hospital a couple of miles over that way. Very frequently, there's a helicopter that flies over there, although that actually might be a plane. How weird. I don't know if you can hear that. Anyway, People are People was released as a 7-inch and 2 12-inches, later on as a CD single. And it's a song. I can't get excited about People are People. I don't think it's lyrically particularly good. Sonically, it's very interesting. There's lots of stuff that's going on in it. There's a lot to talk about it in terms of the sound and the production and the remixes and everything. But as a song, it's a nursery rhyme. You know, People are People. Why should it be that you and I should get along so awfully? And it's just a song about people being people, doing people things, and it's a bit simplistic. I mean, certainly, you know, we're only a couple of years out from A Broken Frame, where Martin was writing songs like The Meaning of Love, and although that was obviously from his earlier period when he was in Norman and the Worms and he was about 14 years old. But it's by no means Depeche Mode's favourite song of theirs. They haven't played it live since 1988, but it's sold by the bucket loads. It's catchy, but then again, so is the common cold. It's not necessarily a recommendation. I think sonically there's a few things about People Are People that are well worth mentioning. I mean, what the bands are doing is that they're using found sounds for People Are People. So they're recording things like, what's the sound of the cutlery in the kitchen sound like? What's the sound of the stones and the pebbles outside? And you can really hear those on the 12-inch edition of People Are People. Here is an American 12-inch of People Are People, which has a slightly different configuration to the standard UK 12-inch. So when I was filling up my record collection and buying these, I was buying if the version from America had more tracks than the version in the UK and I could afford it, I was going to buy the version from America. So we're going to talk about, I think, a couple of things that are on here, which is that there's the 7-inch version here, and then there's the 12-inch version. This is the American 12-inch, which is a 3-track 12-inch, which came out in July 1984. So this has the different mix of People Are People, and that's a fully extended 12-inch version. And then it's also got on side 2, it's got, here it is, although it's upside down. Trust me, take my word for it, the On You Sound remix and what's called the Slick Mix Edit. Now, I bought this because the Slick Mix Edit was not available anywhere else. In my naivety, what it transpired is that the Slick Mix is the 12-inch version of the B-side In Your Memory, and the edit is actually just the 7-inch version. So I spent extra money to get the American 12-inch just to get the 7-inch B-side, which makes me realise suddenly today, I have just realised, I don't actually have the 12-inch version of People Are People on any vinyl format. Well, no, more correctly, In Your Memory, I don't have it on 12-inch. But there you go. America, this was the time when America started to get different tracks on its 12 inches, different remixes, exclusive American-only tracks, and where the discography started to become even more complicated and expensive than it originally was. So there was the 12-inch, which was backed with the Slick Mix, and then there was the 7-inch, and then there was a limited edition 12-inch of People Are People, here in a die-cut sleeve, although it's a very, very minimal sleeve design, which has the On You Sound remix of People Are People and the 7-inch mixes of People Are People and In Your Memory on the original 7-inch versions. Now, with this remix by Adrian Sherwood and the different mix of People Are People, what I was finding is when I was listening to that, is that the band was starting to really kind of explore the sounds that they were able to do. So they were recording the material in ambient and found air environments. So they were going down things like construction sites or their own studio, throwing things down the stairs, recording those, using those as percussive sounds, feeding those into their various synthesizers and bending them and treating them and all that type of stuff. And it's almost like a precursor. So if you listen to contemporary bands that were also on Mute Records, or bands that were associated with them, Depeche Mode were starting to make the same kind of sounds that then became very influential on bands like Front 242, Nights Are Ebb, Nine Inch Nails, all those type of bands. But then also they were borrowing from bands that were also around at the same time. So Depeche Mode probably had very, very interesting record collections at this period. And with People Are People, is effectively what they're doing is they're taking some very, very poppy, very accessible writing, and they're then also spot welding it to these really weird and unusual industrial soundscapes. So it wasn't that the sounds were putting people off, it's probably more the melodies and the vocals. So Dave Gahan was singing quite straightforward melodies. The lyrics were quite accessible. They weren't perhaps as one-dimensional as some of the other ones. So bands like Front 242 and Nights Are Ebb, much as I love them, lyrically they're very minimal. Melodically they're very clipped. They're very short, and that was probably the thing that made the difference, is whereas those bands weren't absolutely huge and Depeche Mode were. Depeche Mode were writing pop songs and presenting them sonically in an area that was very, very similar to industrial music, and very influential upon it, whereas bands like Front 242 and Nights Are Ebb were not writing songs of the same melodic approach and they weren't writing accessible pop songs. Now, they may disagree with me, and that's absolutely fine. I love them both. I've got all of their albums, CDs, etc., yada, 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 as I'm sure is no surprise to any of you. But with People Are People, the band were taking that material and they were putting it into a pop music format. And People Are People, as I've said before, was a huge hit in America. So much so that the band released their first compilation album, People Are People. Here is a CD edition of it. But there is also an LP version of it, which I don't have, which is primarily a compilation greatest hits album. And People Are People was only released in America as an LP, later as a CD. And it featured a number of songs which hadn't been on any previous Depeche Mode album in the US. So it opened with People Are People. It included the B-sides, Work Hard, and Now This Is Fun. It also included, in America for the first time, 7-inch mixes of Get the Balance Right and Leave in Silence, and the 12-inch version of Everything Counts. So it was a probably an opportunistic greatest hits of a sort that was only released in America. And what that meant was when the band did do their singles album, singles 81 to 85, it had to be retitled Catching Up with Depeche Mode. And between this and Catching Up with Depeche Mode, you were able to get a double album of almost all of Depeche's singles and a number of choice B-sides. People Are People has probably been deleted and is officially written out of the band's discography a number of years ago. The second single from the album was released in August 1984, and this is a fantastic song, Master and Servant. Love it to bits. I saw the band play it in 1990 on the World Violation Tour. By the time that the Sounds of the Universe tour got to London, Master and Servant had been deleted from the set list and replaced with Stripped, because I'd not seen Stripped enough times. Well, no, actually that's a lie. I've seen it at pretty much every Depeche Mode gig I've ever been to, apart from one, and that was a showcase show for television. Master and Servant, absolute classic. By the way, there is a fantastic tribute band which played one show called Depeche Mode Ahead, and they do a medley of Master of Servant and Ace of Spades that is phenomenal, and I wish they made records. They are incredible. It's called Master and Servant of Spades, and I will post a link to it. It still hasn't got anywhere near enough views on YouTube. It's a fantastic cover version. Probably my favourite version of Master and Servant, actually, but there you are. And Master and Servant was a leap forward. I mean, lyrically, what was happening is that the band was starting to use tape loops. As I mentioned, they're using found sounds. They're treating the sounds. You know, some of the sounds are actually the instruments being recorded in the room at Hansa Studios, as opposed to being, taken straight from the desk. The band were recording at Hansa Studios in Berlin, which was the same studio where David Bowie had recorded his Berlin trilogy of Low and Heroes, and although it's not really part of a trilogy, there's Lust for Life and The Idiot by Iggy Pop with David Bowie were recorded there. So David Bowie released effectively 4 albums in 1977, and also parts of some of his other albums I think were recorded there. R.E.M. recorded their last album at Hansa, U2 recorded Acton Baby, and Depeche Mode recorded a lot of material there. Apparently the ballroom, which was also a dining hall before it was a studio, has wonderful acoustics. And the problem with Master and Servant as such is that the mix is difficult. It took 7 days for the band to mix it, and they realised they'd missed the snare drum off, but then they figured no one would really notice. And to be fair, I haven't noticed either. It sounds like there's a snare drum that's on there anyway. Sometimes, actually, a song is better with a missing part. So, for example, if you listen to, I think, When Doves Cry by Prince, it doesn't have a bass line on it at all. Master and Servant doesn't have a snare drum on it, although it kind of does in the outro that I can remember. And when they did play it live with the drummer did definitely hit the snare drum. So there was kind of a snare drum sound that was going on at Master and Servant, even though it wasn't there. And I'm sure it's thematic that there's wedding confetti there and a chain, perhaps some terrible, terrible joke about a wife being the old ball and chain, trouble and strife, etc. Indoors. But it's a great song about power relationships. Now, following on from the Construction Time Again album, which was effectively the Labour Party manifesto with a disco beat, Some Great Rewards, especially Master and Servant, was an album that was very geared towards understanding and dissecting, human relationships, power relationships. And I think Martin Gore said something around it's about domination and exploitation in relationships, such as power in the workplace, in love, hate, and sex. And that's what he said in Number One magazine. It was also apparently inspired by a news article that Martin Gore read about the murderer Dennis Nielsen, who murdered a number of gay men in Notting Hill in the 80s. He used to play a game called Master and Servant that inevitably ended up with him murdering people. And that's a dark thing to make a pop song about, but certainly no darker than the Smiths when they did Suffer Little Children. There's also apparently backing vocals on this by two German women, I think Inga and Annabelle Hump, maybe, I'm not sure. I can't read my own writing there, but it's not audible on the finished release. Master and Servant came out in a number of different formats. Naturally, I'm going to show them to you because that's the kind of guy that I am. There was a UK 12-inch, which I don't have. There's a US 12-inch, which features the Master and Servant Black and Blue mix by Joseph Watt, which was only released in America and has only been released on vinyl. The 12-inch version of Set Me Free, Remotivate Me, which was remixed by Joseph Watt as well. And then an edit of the Adrian Sherwood mix of Master and Servant. There was also an On You Sound remix 12-inch. Here it is. And at this point, by the way, I think this has an embossed sleeve. So if you look at it very carefully, you can see that there's actually a set of chains that's embossed upon there, which features the 7-inch mix of Set Me Free, the On You Sound remix of Master and Servant, and the remix of Our People by, and this is limited edition number C49. Not sure what that means. Probably nothing, actually, come to think of it. The standard 12-inch versions. This is one of the original CD releases from the late 80s, 1988. Was featured the Slavery Whip mix, the Voxless version of Master and Servant, a 7-inch version, which was a slight remix, and then the release mix of Set Me Free, which is a 12-inch version, which is 8.5 minutes long. There was also a Razor-made mix of Set Me Free, which put together Master and Servant and Set Me Free and created them as one song. Pretty strange, really, actually, that I haven't got the 12-inch, but I think I've got enough Depeche Mode records. I'm sure you'd probably think I've got too many of them. This was followed up by Some Great Rewards. Can't believe it's taken me 18 minutes to get to talk to about the Some Great Reward album itself, as opposed to the singles. But I've already talked about 4 of the songs. So it was recorded at Hansa Studios as well as in London, and I think that it was definitely their best LP that far. It's got a very, very dense set of production, so that the sounds that are used in between various songs, so for example Blasphemous Rumours and Something to Do, both have the same opening and closing sound. So the album is designed as a whole there, and it opens and closes with the same sound effect to open and close the album, the end of side 2, the start of side 1. And for this album, this was the album that Alan Wilder finished on his own. So the band went on holiday. The band said, right, we've got a week left in the studio. The album's overrunning. Alan, you finish it off. And Alan finished the album. So the last week of mixing and final preparation of the album was Alan on his own. This is the dawning of Alan. And the rest of the band went on holiday. Although, to be fair, it's around about this time that Fletch starts to become obviously less involved in the band than he had perhaps previously. Brian Griffin, who'd done the cover art for the previous albums, did the cover art for this. Somewhat surprisingly, this is an actual photograph of a bride and groom, not an actual bride and groom, but people dressed as a bride and groom standing on the top of a building next to an industrial estate in the Midlands, probably about 10 miles away from where I grew up. This location is now part of the Merryhill Shopping Centre. So if you go to the Merryhill Shopping Centre, you can stand on the very site that Some Great Reward by Depeche Mode, the album cover, was photographed. This was really there, that was really there. They're all demolished now. Presumably they're not there either. Maybe they are, and they go, oh, I'm in the place where I did the album cover. But this is for somewhat strange reason, this is a mid-price budget LP from the late 80s that I bought from a record shop in Spain. I used to get extra pocket money from my parents when I was on holiday in Spain in the 80s. I think my brother did as well. We'd just spend it at the record shop. And this was probably about £4 in 1988 money, although that's probably still about 1 million pesetas at that point. It doesn't have an inner sleeve. It has a very dull and uninteresting sleeve design there, although I did learn today that the word cara is Spanish for side, so there's cara A and cara B, and it's listen to that. Remember we telling you ages ago about how LPs were quite thin? That's me wobbling the LP. You can't do that with a modern album because they're all on 180 gram virgin pressed vinyl or something. This, I think the thinnest LP I ever had was Ned Atomic Dustbin's Godfather. This is pretty much the second thinnest one it is, and you can wobble it and it makes that wibbly wobbly noise when you do it. So Some Great Reward, 9 songs, 2 of which I've already discussed: People Are People and Master and Servants of Spades. Oh, sorry, flashback there to about 10 minutes ago. Something to Do is a great Depeche song. Actually, as an album opener, it's a pretty clear, confident, assertive statement, declaration of intent. The lyric is very much for Something to Do. It's claustrophobic. It's around urban living. It's around, for example, living in small towns where there's really nothing to do but drink. The lyric is, I'm going crazy with boredom, come with me, grey sky over a black town, I can feel depression all around, you've got your leather boots on, I can't stand another drink, it's surprising this town doesn't sink, you've got your leather boots on. It's really about working for a living and living for the weekend and having something to do when you've got that weekend there right in front of you. This is a late 80s CD edition, which by the look of it, according to the label information, was released on Mute Czechoslovakia. As you can see, really pushing out all the stops here with the CD designs. They just take flat transfers of the LP or cassette masters, stick them onto a CD, scan the original LP cover and stick it in there. I think Some Great Reward is a fantastic album. It's not the best Depeche Mode album, but easily the best Depeche Mode album that they'd made up to that point. Really had. Now, the worst thing about Something to Do is that it's got some fairly dated sounds on it. So it's got some horns and some synth stabs that come straight out of the box, and they sound very 1984. They don't sound anything like anything contemporary. There's not very much innovation in that sound at all. Might explain why that part of the album has dated. Like if you listen to Pink Floyd's A Momentary Lapse of Reason, if you listen to Whitney Houston's I Want to Dance with Somebody or True Faith by New Order, you can very, very clearly hear the sound of a very specific preset synthesizer setting on the drum machine. And you can then say, actually, some of the most influential musicians or some of the most influential people in music in the 80s were the people that were doing the presets for these bits of technology in the factories that were saying, that's the standard snare drum sound that we're going to have, or this is going to be one of the 8 snare drum sounds that you've got for this particular keyboard. So there you go. Now, the second track on the album, I'll show you the CD, I might as well show you the 2006 CD and DVD Super Audio CD version of it. The second track on the album is called Lie to Me. Lie to Me is an absolute classic Depeche Mode track. It's got this wonderful kind of undulating, it slowly comes in and then it slowly fades out, each instrument being added slowly as it goes along. But there's also this section where Martin Gore is kind of duetting in the background in a call and response fashion with Dave Gahan's vocal, and Dave Gahan's vocal is actually then, when he finishes singing the verse, the melody line then continues and is being played on the synthesizer. So effectively the synthesizer is duetting and continuing the melody from Dave Gahan, especially at the end of each verse. And there's this wonderful section right at the end where almost all of the instrumentation drops out, but there's just that insistent throbbing bass line, and then Martin Gore just wordlessly kind of croons a section that's all very, very similar to Pink Floyd's Great Gig in the Sky, where the words are meaningless, but what happens is the melody goes to another place. It's almost like some kind of weird synthesizer computer orgasm thing, and it's just wonderful, actually. And I love it. It shouldn't be the second track on the album. The second track on the album, after Something to Do, should be People Are People, and then the third track should be Master and Servant. But as I've mentioned before, that would keep the bang, 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 and then maybe by the fourth track you then go into maybe Lie to Me, or If You Want, something like that. So the second track is Lie to Me. The third track is People Are People, which we've talked about. The fourth one is called It Doesn't Matter. It's the first of two Depeche Mode songs called It Doesn't Matter. It doesn't mean that they're particularly good songs. It just means that they've got two songs called It Doesn't Matter. One is It Doesn't Matter, and the other one is It Doesn't Matter 2. And It Doesn't Matter 2 is on Black Celebration. It's considerably better than It Doesn't Matter 1. It Doesn't Matter 1, my partner came down when I was listening to this a few weeks ago and went, well, turn that creepy rubbish off. And they are exactly right to say that, because it's weird, and that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. It's kind of like a Michael Nyman, Philip Glass, arpeggiated kind of synth part there, and it's something about the instrumentation on that sounds slightly off, and I think it's meant to kind of disturb or upset or push you out of thinking that this is relatively normal. And then the fifth track on the album is Stories of Old, which I don't think is particularly good, actually. I think they've only performed it live once, and that was in the studio in 2009 as a DVD extra. Not that they can't play it live, they just couldn't find a place to put it in their set lists. And at this point, Depeche were having difficulty putting things into their set lists because they'd already got lots and lots of different songs which were strong and needed to be in the set. Turning over the LP to side 2, because I'm old-fashioned like that, and we have what turns out to be the third and final single from the album, Somebody. And it's at this point that I probably should have rehearsed this a little more, because Somebody, as a single, was released on a 7-inch and a 12-inch, and also it has a French CD single with 5 tracks on it. But Somebody as a song is the first Martin Gore vocal that's also a single. And it was just performed by Alan and Martin, playing live. Martin was naked when this was recorded. Alan has confirmed that that was the case. And then it was remixed for a single. And by remixed, really they just changed a couple of the sound effects at the beginning and faded it out a little at the end. Dave Gunn did try to sing it. There are normally between 1 and 2 songs sung by Martin on each Depeche album. On this album, the songs sung by Martin were It Doesn't Matter and Somebody. And sometimes Dave needs to sing the song for the rest of the band to go, I think Martin's version is better. There is also, when the song is played live, there is an extra verse that's sung live, where he thinks that in a place like this I might get away with it. I will post a link to a live version so that you can confirm with me that is the case. I don't think that verse is on the studio recording of the song. 7th song on the album, Master and Servant. Well, we've mentioned that one before. And then the next one is If You Want. If You Want is the last song written by Alan Watt that appears on a Depeche Mode album. And I think that's a great shame. I think what Alan was doing is he said he doesn't like the songs that he's written for Depeche Mode. He said they're too poppy. I don't like the songs. I felt obliged to contribute, so I wrote songs. And I think maybe, and when you listen to Alan's solo material, especially Recoil, you can hear that Alan is far more interested in sounds and textures and production and layering and atmospheres than he is in writing conventional pop songs. But if you listen to If You Want on here, there is no quality gap between this and any of Martin's songs on there. you wouldn't necessarily listen to If You Want and go, that was written by a different guy. It sounds like a Depeche Mode song. There were 4 songs that Alan wrote for this album. 3 of them the band chose not to use. Circulating versions of the demos sung by Alan and recorded by Alan in his home studio in 1983 and 1984 are available on the internet if you want to find them. I will post links to them down there. But If You Want I think it's a great song. I wish Alan had written more, because I think he was growing into becoming a really, really good songwriter. And then at the point where he perhaps had a crisis of confidence, didn't like the songs he was writing, stopped writing songs. I think he may have written one more with Depeche, actually, which was a B-side, probably Christmas Island, I think, which I will mention shortly. But I just think that he didn't feel that the songs were particularly honest. It felt to me like Alan was trying to write songs that sounded like Martin, and he was doing a really good job of it, but he didn't convince himself that that was what he wanted to do. The last song on the album, side 2, track 4, Blasphemous Rumours. What feels like perhaps a potentially flippant song about teenage suicide, although if you've seen the 101 film, you will know it most definitely has a strong meaning to some people. It's the best song to end the album with. Both Andy and Vince Clarke went to church. Martin went to church as well, so there was a religious element to that. The band were using the found sounds. They were using, stones and bits of metal and tapping on hammers and all that type of stuff to create this weird soundscape that went alongside with it. And it's a strong, powerful song, and probably perfect for the band's audience, because probably the band's audience at this point was somewhere between about 17 and 24. They were either up to their necks in teenage angst, or having just experienced it. A song about suicide, it's a thing that happens a lot when you're younger. As certainly I had a lot of teenage angst when I was 17 or 18. I was listening to this album when I was 17 or 18. I wasn't thinking that Martin Gore was the only person on the planet who understood me. He didn't even know I existed. But when you're that age, it can be really, really tough. Transitioning from being a child to being an adult, not knowing where you sit in the world, not being taken seriously by people because of your age, not having, the fair division of responsibilities. When you turn over to being 16, for example, you can have sex, you can get married, but only with your parents' permission, and you can sign up for the army, but you still need your parents' permission if you want to get married. And it's all a bit weird. There's like a borderline 2-3 years where you're not a child, you're not an adult, you're not treated seriously, you're probably not got a huge amount of money, unless you've, big on TikTok or something, and you're struggling, and you're meant to take on the responsibilities of being an adult, which inevitably is very expensive, but you don't have the support structure, you don't have the financial structure in place. Basically, you're poor and you're angry and you're fed up. Is where a lot of people were when they were that age. That was Depeche Mode's target market then. And so a song probably resonated very, very deeply with a number of people. I had a pretty miserable teenage years. You can probably tell by my record collection. Things have changed for me. I'm not miserable now, I think. But it's, you don't know how, or you can't understand where you are unless you remember how you got there. So you do have to remember the path that you took on the way. The next thing that happened, well, there's a whole bunch of live stuff that we're going to address. What I am also going to mention is a bootleg CD, the Some Great Reward Remixes, which features Martin Gore demos of I Love You, Love Me, Love, the Gary Glitter song, recorded before everyone knew who Gary Glitter really was, and a song called Down in the Boondocks as well, alongside all of the A's and B's of the various singles and remixes. There was a guy selling off his Depeche Mode collection in the late 90s, and conversely, I was a guy buying some guy's Depeche Mode collection in the late 80s as well. The final single from the album was the double A side, which I've mentioned previously, of Somebody and Blasphemous Rumours. This was backed with 5 live tracks, So the 4-track EP 7-inch features "Told You So" and "Everything Counts" live, recorded at the Liverpool Empire on the 29th of September 1984. The 12-inch features "Blasphemous Rumours," the LP mix, at 45 RPM, and on the B side, 4 songs, 33 RPM, effectively a mini live album of "Somebody," 2-Minute Warning, "Ice Machine," and "Everything Counts." None of those tracks, I think, had been on any previous live release. So effectively, it was side 3 of the Live at Hammersmith release, or side 4 actually of the Live at Hammersmith release from 1982. These were recorded at the Liverpool Empire. I've only been to Liverpool twice in my life, and I can't say that I had a great time. The first time and the second time was pretty amazing actually. But Liverpool itself is not a city that has a huge meaning to me, apart from that's where some band called the Beatles came from, which you may have heard of. So Blasphemous Rumours, 12-inch there, then also a French CD single of Blasphemous Rumours. This takes the 12-inch configuration with the LP mix of Blasphemous Rumours and the 4 live tracks recorded at the Liverpool Empire. On the B-side, you will see the lyrics to "Somebody" have been torn up and photographed, which is a pretty nice bit of design actually. Next thing that happened was a radio broadcast of Depeche Mode live at the Hammersmith Odeon in, I think it was November, might have been October 1984. They played 4 shows at the Hammersmith Odeon. I think it was the last time that they played Hammersmith Odeon as Depeche Mode, although Dave Gahan did play there as a solo artist in 2003. And this is a bootleg LP of the London Hammersmith show. It was also, by the way, you could buy mail order. You could buy a mail order cassette from a company called Rage live at London Hammersmith Odeon, which was the whole show apart from the 2 last songs of the encore. The radio broadcast version of it featured about an hour of material, including, by the way, because one of the members of the band, I'm going to guess it was Fletch, pressed the wrong button during the ending section of Master and Servant, and the wrong samples were played, which were fixed for the radio broadcast. The wrong version is on the cassette, which was sold by Rage mail order, which features the whole show apart from the last 2 songs of the last encore. The radio broadcast features those fixed samples. So this is a pretty great live show actually, well worth listening to. It's available on a number of bootleg releases as well, including this one, which I paid £7 for. This is called "Everything Counts." It's a double LP live at Hammersmith Odeon in 1982 and 1984, and it features a couple of extra songs which aren't on the radio transcription there, because the BBC used to broadcast different songs from the show on different radio broadcasts and different syndications, and they would sell the radio broadcast to other countries and local radio as well, with slightly different track listings. So instead of there being about an hour, which was the length that was broadcast in any one given night, you might end up with 75 or 80 minutes, because they might change a couple of songs out at the various broadcasts. In the days when vinyl was dead on its arse and no one was buying vinyl, I was still buying vinyl, so I got this Depeche Mode double LP for £5 in about 2007, when somebody clearly thought, oh, I really, really like CDs, I don't like vinyl at all. There was one more release from the period, released in 1985, the band's first live VHS tape, Depeche Mode, The World We Live In, and Live in Hamburg. This is not the full show, it's missing a couple of tracks, but it's about 90 minutes of live Depeche Mode. It's not been released on DVD. In fact, it's only been on Laserdisc in Japan and America, and on VHS in the rest of the world. This is the UK version. The American version is 60 minutes long. The US version, the UK version is 90 minutes. The US version is 60 minutes long. This is okay. Really? I really wish this was on DVD. It really, really, really should be on DVD. I don't quite understand why this isn't on DVD. I don't even have a VHS player. They stopped making VHS players in 2016. So for some reason, if you want to watch Depeche Mode live in Hamburg, the way that you've got to go with it now is effectively you've just got to go to YouTube where someone's ripped it from a Laserdisc and put it up there. And I'll post a link to the Live in Hamburg Laserdisc rip, which is about 85 minutes. It misses 2 songs due to copyrights, but I am pretty surprised actually, because this has been unavailable for about 30 years, maybe 25 years. It's been out of print since the mid-90s at the very, very latest. So it should be better known, and it isn't. Now, the next thing that happened is a non-album single, which turned into an album single. The release of Shake the Disease, which was a 7-inch backed with flexible, and there was a 12-inch version of Shake the Disease as well. Now, Shake the Disease is not the best Depeche Mode song. It's an okay single, but it's not amazing. Flexible as the B-sides is catchy and vaguely irritating. It is, again, not my favourite Depeche Mode track at all. So Shake the Disease was played live up to around about 1990. I saw the band play it on the World Violation Tour. It's also been played as a piano acoustic number by Martin a few times since then. It doesn't have that compelling sense of this is an incredible first song from a first album. It sounds like just another Depeche Mode single. So it's not brilliant at all. It's pretty good, but it's not brilliant. And then there's extended versions on the various 12 inches. There was also a limited edition remix 12-inch, which features an Edit the Shake mix, which is terrible. Master and Servant recorded in Basel in Switzerland. A pre-deportation mix of Flexible, which is forgettable, and a remix by Gareth Jones of Something to Do, which is called the Metal Mix. And the Metal Mix of Something to Do is a fantastic, pounding, experimental song that basically is a huge instrumental, somewhat industrial kind of race through the band's song. There was also a bootleg 12-inch of Flexible with a remix on a 12-inch dub, and here's another version, the other 12-inch. The band is called Fast Fashion because Depeche Mode, translated out of French, stands for the phrase fast fashion. There's quite a few bootleg 12 inches of Depeche Mode that go out. Are they any good? Survey says not a chance. And then there was a singles LP. This is Depeche Mode, the singles, 1981 to 1985. First time the band were featured on the cover. Gatefold sleeve with lots of photographs on the inside. An inner sleeve which features reviews of the singles and tells you how terrible they are, including Neil Tennant describing Blasphemous Rumours as a routine slab of gleam in which God is given a severe ticking off. So for each one of the singles there is a bad review and a good review, but it is not, the LP version is not a fully comprehensive list of all the singles. The Meaning of Love is not on here, and yeah, it deserves not to be on there either. I don't think Dreaming of Me is on this. No, it is actually, yes. So Dreaming of Me, New Life, but The Meaning of Love is conspicuous by its absence on the grounds that it's crap. In America, this was called Catching Up with Depeche Mode, and Catching Up with Depeche Mode had a different running order, which featured songs which weren't on the People of People compilation. This is a 1980s Mute Records CD edition of the album, which doesn't have the bad reviews in. There was a second single that was released. It was It's Called a Heart. The band do not like It's Called a Heart. Alan says, I remember that we were vehemently against it. I thought we were going backwards. It was so poppy and trite, and we had other songs that were much, much better. Martin says, that is probably my least favourite track that we've released. And I agree with them. It's Called a Heart is shit. It was released in a number of formats. Here's a 7-inch. It's blacked with a fantastic Depeche Mode track called Fly on the Windscreen. which was played live as late as 2008. Fly on the Windscreen is also the song that Depeche Mode have performed the most that I have not seen. There was a double 12-inch which features extended mixes of It's Called the Heart and Fly on the Windscreen, and truly appalling mixes of It's Called a Heart, the slow mix and the death mix, which are only available on this limited edition double 12-inch. Those tracks were not on the CD reissues in the 90s, and I'm like, oh, a Depeche Mode remix I haven't heard. I've got to buy it. Paid a fortune for it. Remixes, terrible. Don't buy the slow mix of It's Called a Heart. In America, there was a different 12-inch which featured the Emotion remix and the Emotion dub mix, engineered by Joseph Watts and remixed by Joseph Watts. It's not particularly good. Again, I paid more money than I wanted to hear a remix that wasn't particularly good, and I felt thoroughly manipulated into spending extra money for a second-hand record that was not particularly good at all. But I owned it. I mentioned on the B-side of Shake the Disease, there were some live tracks recorded live in Basel. There were 3 more live tracks from the Some Great Reward tour that were released on the Question of Love cassette single and European limited edition remix single. This features If You Want, Shame and Blasphemous Rumours, recorded in Basel in Switzerland in 1984 on it. In the UK, this version was only released as a cassette, so you don't get to own it anywhere else. And finally, here is a promotional double LP of B-sides and 12-inch mixes that the band made. That was released in 1991 to coincide with the singles box sets 1, 2 and 3. That gives you a pretty comprehensive rush through the Depeche Mode discography for Some Great Reward, the singles, and the singles themselves, People of People, Master and Servant, Blasphemous Rumours, Somebody, Shake the Disease, and It's Called a Heart. And I'm all talked out, so I'm going to stop there. I'll post links to various live shows down there in the comments. Stay beautiful. I will see you all again